My name, and indeed my channel, is Artsy Akira. I'm going to get this out of the way right now. I am not a professional artist by any stretch of the imagination. That means I will not be doing tutorial videos. I will be doing videos where I follow tutorials, perhaps, but I will not be doing tutorial videos. I am still learning myself, and that's the reason I'm starting this channel, to try and promote my enjoyment of learning. Well, to be entirely honest with you and completely frank, I don't really enjoy learning art right now, and I want to. So that's the goal of this channel. The goal is not to make a bunch of tutorial videos and teach people the wrong things every time I make a video, because that's what I would do. But today, I have a separate goal in mind, aside from learning tutorials. What I'm going to do is, on a monthly basis, I'm going to make a video that features the exact same type of content. And that video will be a landmark of my progression as an artist. So, what will I be doing, you might ask? I will be creating an image of SAMUS ARAN, who is possibly my favorite character in video gaming. I adore her. So I want to be able to do this every month and see if it gets progressively better and better. I've never done anything like this. I'd like to see how and if I progress. The tools that I will be using. For my tablet, I'm using a Wacom Intuos Draw. And I will be using Paint Tool Sci version 2. Not Photoshop. I do have Photoshop, but it doesn't run particularly well, especially when I'm recording everything. Paint Tool Sci works well for me. It gets the stuff done that I want it to get done. So, without further nonsense, let's get right into this. So, this will be a post commentary over the 20 or so minutes of time-lapse footage. In the background, you're going to hear me really badly playing guitar. That's because I don't have easy access to royalty-free music that I am comfortable with using. But if I just noodle away on the instrument that I already have, even if it's bad, it's at least a little bit of background noise. Now, I want to do this post-commentary not just to fill the void with random noise, but to also have an idea of how I looked at things and how I continue to look at things as I do these videos on a monthly basis. I'm obviously going to be doing more than just this kind of video once a month. I want to try and do a video every week, but I want it to be something different. This video serves the sole purpose of acting as a landmark, as I said in the beginning. I have never really had a very distinct representation of my progress as an artist, and this is a good way to have that. You'll notice that at one point I was drawing a completely separate pose, but I decided to trash that and just go for something a little more simple by doing a pose that I already have reference for. There is no shame at all in using references. I know exactly how it can feel to use references. I know it feels stifling. I know it feels like you're copying or stealing from somebody else, but you're not. You're learning. And that's the entire point. So don't be afraid to use references. I kind of still don't like references, but I do my best to use them where I can. So, basically, this is a couple hours of time-lapse footage. The way I recorded the time-lapse was I recorded it in 3 frames per second with OBS, and then I bumped that footage up to 30 frames per second. So it's not actually a time-lapse. Not in the usual sense of the word. When people think of time-lapse, they think you just speed the video up, and yeah, that's pretty much what's happening. But it's a bit of a different method. And this is the nature of doing post commentary, is that I have no idea what to say and fill 20 minutes with. I suppose I can talk a little bit of my background as an artist, which I'm pretty sure I've played Gary's mod more than I've drawn, which isn't saying much because I've only played Gary's mod for about 600 hours total since 2009. I haven't drawn a lot. It was basically in February of 2016 that I really started to draw more, but even since then I haven't drawn much. You'll notice I drew a really big breast there. I'm not used to drawing more petite boobs. I like to draw my girls big and voluptuous. That's my favorite thing to do, but Samus isn't as big and voluptuous as the internet would have you believe. So you'll notice at a lot of points in this piece, I go onto a reference and I trace out the shape of something that I'm having difficulty with. That's not to cheat, as you might think of the word, because a lot of people, when they think about tracing, they think, oh, you're cheating. You're just stealing somebody else's art. And if you're making money off of it and such, then yeah, you're definitely stealing somebody else's art, and you should absolutely be ashamed of that. But when you're learning, there is no harm in tracing first, because it teaches your muscles what you're able to do, or what they have to do. Because the biggest difference between me and my friend Gore, for example, who did the shading for my avatar, he has been drawing every single day for the past 12 or 13 years. He has a ton of muscle memory built up in his wrist. I don't have that muscle memory. You'll notice a lot as I'm going through this, I have very unconfident lines, and my proportions are off sometimes. Actually, a lot of the time. And even hands. Like, I'm better at drawing hands than I used to be, but that's still not very good because, you know, hands are notoriously difficult. So I did what I said, and I traced out the hand again. But I didn't actually use that hand, no matter how tempted I was to do so, because it didn't look too bad. I could have just used that as it was. Instead, I put it off to the side, and I did my best to copy it from there, just so that I had a bigger reference image. I could have made the reference image bigger, obviously. Would have been easier. But, like I said, there's merit in tracing, because it teaches you muscle memory. You may not realize that it's happening, but it's a good thing to do anyway. I used to trace Pikachu a ton when I was a kid, and it turns out I can kind of draw Pikachu fairly well. But that's the kind of thing where if you just feel uncomfortable tracing, then don't. But you shouldn't feel uncomfortable copying another image or copying another pose or anything like that. Especially if you're not making money off of it. Because you're learning. If you are making money off of it and you're completely copying something like brushstroke for brushstroke, then that's called plagiarism and you should feel bad. Because that's a bad thing. You notice my guitar in the background is getting a little bit twangy because my fingers were getting heavy at this point. Other than that, right now there's not much to say. I go through a very specific process when I'm drawing, and that is to work on a skeletal frame to build a base on. And then from that skeletal frame, I do what I call fleshing, which is I just put a layer over top that looks like a more refined, fleshed out version of the skeleton, and goes closer towards what I want eventually. You'll notice that her left leg is actually disproportionately large compared to the rest of her. I do fix that. This first bit of the time lapse is actually done in a day, and at one point I got too tired to continue, so I just shut it off for the night and started again. but you will notice that I do a lot of tracing just to get an idea of the shapes in play with Samus. And indeed, you'll notice that I'm using figurines of Samus, which I didn't notice for the longest time, so I was wondering why she had such oddly shaped limbs. That would be the reason, is because she was a figurine that I was basing my drawing off of. I had somebody else's piece of art in the bottom that I didn't get the name of, but I didn't actually use any part of that piece except for the color of the gun handle, because obviously you can't see that in the little statue, but by the time I got to the end of the footage, the handle was showing through between her fingers for me. So that's all I used that image for. It was a really, really well done image, and I hope I get to a point like that, because that would be awesome. But one step at a time. As it is now, I am happy that I finished an artwork. I don't often finish what I start when it comes to art because I get very discouraged of myself. I expect too much of what I'm unable to do, to put it simply. And I think that's a problem that a lot of artists get. Is that, well, they just expect to be able to do something that they simply can't do. And I'm still not exactly accepting of that fact, but I think that's another reason that I wanted to start this channel, is so that I could learn to accept that. And over time be able to say, this is just how it goes, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to be less skilled than I would like to be. And I think maybe that's how it's always going to be. Because you're probably always going to see somebody who's been drawing for 10 extra years, and they're just plain better than you. They've got better execution, they've got more imaginative ideas, what have you. It's going to happen, and it's going to make you feel inadequate. It'll make me feel inadequate when I see that sort of thing. Without a doubt, I've experienced it plenty of times. Even when Gore did the shading for my avatar. I did the line work, I did the colors, I did the anatomy construction and everything like that, but the shading that he did is just so much better than anything that I could do, but he's been drawing every single day for 13 years. Well, you know, almost every single day. There's probably a gap here or there. Doesn't really matter. He's been drawing a fuck of a lot longer than I have. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I've drawn less than I've played video games, and specifically just Gary's mod. I absolutely know that I've drawn less than I've played video games because I've spent my lifetime playing video games almost every single day. But again, I'm really hoping that this channel will be the chance to turn that around, because I bought myself a nice new tablet. I had one before. It was kind of old and rickety. It still works perfectly fine, and I'm probably going to send it off to a friend of mine who no longer has a tablet and wants to get back into drawing. And I'm all for that, because I really do genuinely enjoy drawing. I enjoy creating something that I can be proud of. It's a process. You just have to kind of take it as it comes. You'll notice the footage starts getting a little bit laggy here. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but this is the line work phase. I use a binary pencil, which is something that Plague of Gripes had turned me on to, because this is what he does for his line work, is he uses the binary pencil, gives him really, really solid, just crisp lines, and I love that. So it's something that I started incorporating into what I do for line work, and I really like the effect. It's definitely not as good as what Plague of Gripes is able to do with his line work, but he's also known for his line work. And again, been drawing a lot longer than I have. I don't have the experience. That's what I lack. I don't have the experience. I have plenty of good ideas. Maybe not the best ideas, but I got plenty of good ideas. It's just that I don't have the mechanical means to see those ideas to fruition. And you know what? A lot of people don't. And a lot of people just don't bother to get those skills either. And I've had a long time to get those skills. I think I actually got my first digital tablet in February 2015. I think I said 2016 earlier, but I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. I can check my archives in a minute here and get the exact date. Well, not the exact date, but I know the year that it will be. And I know what month I got my tablet in said year. Oh, beginning of 2016. Okay, I was right the first time. So I've had a tablet for almost 2 years now. And I'm not at the point I'd like to be at. And that's just the simple way of putting it, is that I'm not where I want to be. And the reason for that is that I would go for months at a time without drawing a single thing. Not even touching my tablet. And if you do that, you're obviously not going to improve. It's the same thing for my guitar. I've had a guitar, God, since I was in elementary school. I'm 22 now, turning 23 in less than 6 months. And I've had a guitar, I'm pretty sure, since I was 9 years old. Then I'm, again, not at the level I'd like to be at because I just didn't practice every day or even every other day. I could go for months or even a year or more at a time without touching my guitar. So, you know, let that be a lesson. If you want to get better, you actually have to do the work to get better. You can't just expect to immediately be better when you put finger to string or pen to paper. So at this point in the artwork, I am all finished with the line work. It's still laggy as hell on this preview. I don't know if that'll be the case when I render it. But I am now just blocking in the colors of Samus. Getting a base skin tone to put down. And a base color of her Zero Suit. I tend to go for mid-tones. This is her hair going on here. Again, going for mid-tones more than anything, because if you start in the middle, you can work down and up to equal degrees. Now, the face that I have drawn here, I'm not particularly happy with it. What I am happy with is that I got this artwork finished to a point that I would consider finished. I didn't paint a background or anything like that. I might do that actually for the next video. Learn how to paint an interesting background for Samus to stand in. But that would just create more work on a monthly basis to do this video over again. Or at least this type of video, not the exact video, obviously. But all in all, I actually had fun with this process. Here, I'm doing something that I learned recently, which is to work in grayscale while shading, because it makes it a hell of a lot easier to see what you're doing exactly. It just took me a minute to start figuring out clipping groups properly. So this has been a few minutes, and by a few minutes I mean like 10 minutes in between when I spoke last and now, because I have central heating because I live in Canada and it's getting cold here. And given my location, basically every once in a while the furnace turns on, gets loud as fuck, and I can't record anything audio related. So that's a problem. I don't remember what I was talking about, so I'm just going to say what I'm doing here. I'm working in grayscale because it actually makes it a lot easier to see where you need to shade and where you need to put shadows and highlights and everything, because it's not muddied up by color. If you're doubtful of that, then just give it a try. It makes shading a hell of a lot easier. If you're in Paint Tool SI or Photoshop, or I think pretty much any painting program, you can then take the layer of grayscale that you just made and change the hue and saturation to whatever matches what you're painting. It's very useful, and I recommend that you do it a lot, possibly all the time when you're shading. It really does make things a lot easier. You just work in mid-tone gray, dark gray, and lighter grays, and then you change those up as you need to using the hue and saturation tools. So you'll notice I'm doing that here. The window doesn't actually pop up because I'm only recording the side 2 window. It's a bit odd, but that's just how it goes. But with the shading of the suit, or the Zero suit beginning, we are coming closer, ever closer to the end of the video. We've got about 3 minutes left, and at this point it's just getting the shading on the face done, the hair, and the gun, and then adding detail to the suit, because the Zero suit has a lot of little details on it. So again, just working grayscale. You don't exactly have to do a full gradient grayscale background so that you can work in grayscale. I don't know why I did that, it just kind of did. But you can work in grays and then edit the tone from there. You can really work in any color that you're comfortable with, like if you want to work in a soft brown or a burgundy or something like that. Work in that color. If you want to work in a hot pink for shading, work in that color, because you can change it to whatever you want. I was just using grayscale because, well, that's easiest for me. It really lets me see where the light should be and shouldn't be. Obviously, it's not perfectly shaded, because I'm not a perfect artist, plain and simple. So there's going to be some points where it looks weird and doesn't look like it should be shaded that way, but I think it's serviceable at the very least. And that's really all I was hoping for. So getting onto the gun here. The gun I shaded really basically because you'll notice the gun was the only thing that I actually traced and put on the image, because I have a huge problem with hard edge models and drawing something hard edge. I don't know why, but it's a huge issue for me. So here I have made the base colors of the suit transparent, and I am working on the details. At this point, I'm probably taking a screenshot or talking to somebody. I don't know. There are points where I just kind of sit there, or it might have been lag that I was seeing, because, yeah, my preview window has gotten laggy again. I really hope that doesn't show up in the render. If it does, then I can only apologize and hope that you actually continued to watch this, because, well, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter if you didn't watch it. There's not really all that much valuable to say, or that I've said so far. So you're not really missing out on much by not watching. I doubt I'll have any decent retention on these videos, but if I do, that'll be a very pleasant surprise indeed. But I really do hope that this really low frame rate doesn't show up in the render. I think this is just a thing that Adobe Premiere does, is it just lags in the preview window if your computer isn't good enough, and my computer is kind of old and didn't have a very good GPU in the first place. And if you hear that in the background, that is my furnace again, except considering this is pretty much a finished video in 15 seconds, I'm not going to bother stopping it. I'm just doing some last finishing touches here, and that just about does it. And there I have Zero Suit Samus. I'm just putting my signature on there and complete. I have to thank you all very much for watching if you got to this point. Please do expect more videos in the future. Hopefully on a weekly basis. I will be doing that same Samus pose again next month. On December 8th I will do that. But until next time, have a good one.